Hello and welcome to Tea Talks. I'm your host Yasmine Tanres, and I want you to grab a cup of tea or your favorite beverage and join me in conversations with today's most influential personalities and thought leaders from across the world while we explore their opinions, journey, and passions. From the art of negotiation to the gamification of relationships and how to maximize your purest potential, you'll be sure to feel informed, engaged, and inspired. So let's take a sip and dive right into it. Cheers. So this next guest that I have joining me here today, I am so honored to introduce and so privileged to have on here. He is a leading sports and performance psychologist who has worked with the likes of Kobe Bryant, Michael Jordan, Shaquil O'Neal, and so many others, as well as top executives. He is also the author of The Mindful Athlete, Secrets to Pure Performance. He's also known, or I would say, as a mindfulness guru, and known to so many as the performance whisperer, which is very unusual. And so I'm very honored to introduce to you George Mumford. Thank you so much for joining us here today on Tea Talks.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. It's great to see you.
Thank you. I must say, cheers to you. Thank you for making the time. I know you're over in Boston. I'm here in LA. What's your beverage go-to?
Well, there's a couple of them. I usually drink Chinese herbal tea, and so there's a couple different types of herbal tea from my Chinese medical people. My Chinese doctor has a tea, and then my other guy has a tea as well. But when I'm not drinking Chinese tea, I'm drinking usually ginger and throat coat. I usually do a cocktail. I have two of them.
Is that to like make sure you have that deep, profound
Yeah, ginger is
voice?
really helpful, and the throat coat is helpful also because I get allergies and I get when I stay in hotels and I have to fly, I usually my sinuses get kind of congested or I get I might even get swollen glands. So it's just I just like the taste, but they're very medicinal as well as tasty. So that's the sweet spot when it tastes good and it does you good.
Oh, well, you got all the good stuff going on. And
Yes.
Chinese teas are known to be so full of nutrition and so good for you. It sounds
How about
like
you?
almost myself. Okay, I'm cheating a little bit. I actually have coffee in here with
Well, that's pretty good.
hemp milk.
Okay, that's cool. That's good. I've been accused of inviting people out to coffee and then having tea. So
honestly, though, it's one of those days because I've had a 6 a.m. call, and I think that should be illegal during this time of quarantine. But I've had to reach for the coffee today. Otherwise, I'd be with you on a matcha tea or something like that, keeping it clean and healthy.
Whatever works.
Exactly, whatever gives you energy and tastes good. So, I mentioned this to you, and I just want to share this with the audience that I came across you in the summer, and I almost feel like it was just the time to be. And it was one of my good friends in Singapore who me and her, we were exchanging book ideas, and she had been reading The Mindful Athlete. And she was saying, you would love this book because it's all about being in the zone. And it doesn't just apply to anybody who's an athlete. It really applies to anybody within any given field who wants to really reach their fullest potential and reach peak performance. And so I was like, this kind of reminds me of The Last Dance, because I just finished watching it. It's the 10-part docuseries that was on HBO. Now it's on Netflix. If you haven't watched it, please do go ahead and watch it. And I was just like, well, it really sounds like it, because watching Michael Jordan and all the players, it felt like they were so in the zone and nothing else around them existed. And I was just so curious, like, how is that even possible? And clearly this is why they are like, these people that you've worked with are seriously some of the greatest. And it dawned on me. And when I looked into the book and then I looked into you, I was like, oh my God, he's worked with these guys. Like, Okay, I'm now putting two and two together.
Yes.
There's obviously a mechanism behind the whole wheel that's happening in order to create that space that they seem to be in with the utmost focus.
Mm-hmm.
And so, obviously, just giving a brief background of the story is you've really been through so much, really loved the art and played basketball, but were unable to do that because you'd kept on breaking like parts of your body, and then just were
Mm-hmm.
geared towards the finance world, which didn't really resonate with you. And you had gone through this whole journey of also taking drugs and, you know, being in a place of nearly losing yourself and nearly killing yourself off. But then there was this thing, you know, through rehabilitation and then through going through this mindfulness program that you had been at with Dr. John Kabat-Zinn, where
Mm-hmm.
you had found your path and journey. And I don't just want to go into the fact that you practice mindfulness, because that's one aspect. To really ignite performance, that's another aspect. And so for the viewers or audiences who don't really know what that is, like, explain to us, what is mindfulness, and how were you, as the likes of Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, how are you able to use that as a powerful tool to reach your fullest potential?
Yes. So just a little background. I actually was interviewed for The Last Dance because I was there for the whole thing, and at the last, the video they did with my interview that didn't get in there, but I watched it for a fourth time last night. I watched all 10 episodes yesterday, and because I keep watching it, and I saw myself in the Utah game, in game 7 in Utah. I saw me sitting in. There was a couple of times I saw myself. So okay, that's interesting, because I was definitely there. But for me, having been an athlete and having been around elite athletes all my life, and when I was in high school, two of my teammates were all Americans, and of course, I went to UMass Amherst, and Dr. J. Julius Irving was my roommate there. So I was always around elite athletes, and so for me to find my way to the Bulls and Phil Jackson in 1993, I was working at the Center for Mindfulness, which is what it's called now, but in those days it was the Stress Reduction and Relaxation Program. So I've always been engaged in, and I do I've been doing Tai Chi for many years. So I've been in a martial arts, and I'm a physical person anyway. So, so for me to really be able to talk about mindfulness, which everybody has moments of mindfulness, it's just really being fully present, is being able to observe experience from this relaxed receptivity, where you're able to let things speak to you in their own language. So it's like having a mirror mind, with a mirror with nothing on it. It's just clear mirror, and whatever's in front of it, it just reflects it. And so this process of being mindful, of being able to be in the moment, is a process that allows us to see things without embellishment, without interpretation, without projection, but just seeing the raw data. And then in that seeing, coming out of that, what I call the eye of the hurricane, or that silence, there's a knowing. And so you see things clearly, crystally, and because you see things clearly and you have understanding on how to create space between stimulus and response, in that space you have the freedom and power to choose your response in alignment with your goals, and coming from that quiet place inside. So it's an inside out job. But the thing is, when you're doing that, and it makes you, so being mindful, practicing insight meditation, or practicing this process of observing ourselves and our experience in a way where you're able to just see things in a way where it makes you zone ready or flow ready. So you start to see things, and then you start to be able to do things effortlessly, and they happen spontaneously. So I'd say being in the zone is like being spontaneous. Like
Mm.
it's like spontaneity. It's like you're just acting, and for most of the time, you have some ideas, but you don't really know what you're going to do until the time comes, because it's an immediacy of experience. It's like you see something and you just, It just happens. It's like in Zen and the Art of Archery, they talk about when you take the arrow and you shoot it, it shoots. You don't shoot, it shoots. And so there's this thing, and for artists and other folks, we all have these zone experiences, but we don't know how to talk about them or actually how to reflect on them. But it's really more about teaching people how to be present and how to be themselves, be real, be authentically themselves. So in order to do that, you have to have a self-awareness, and you have to it's an inside out job. It's like you have to be yourself. And when you're performing at your high level, you're being yourself and you're enjoying it, and it's effortless, and you actually don't have a sense of being there because there's no self-consciousness. You're just there. And so it's a process of understanding how to be in the moment and how to be able to. So it's more about being than doing, because we do things, but the doing and the having is a reflection of the being. And so when we can just be ourselves, and we can be present, and we can be calm, we can be alert and relaxed and understanding, reflecting and understanding what we're doing and what we're looking for is really important. So mindfulness by itself is not enough. We have to have some idea, some information, some intellect, some intuition about what it is. So you have mindfulness and wisdom working together, where the wisdom could be clearly knowing, even if it's just knowing a little bit, to knowing real deeply what it is we're doing and what we're getting. So that there's this immediate feedback of being in the moment, doing something, and then getting the feedback and making the adjustment or adjustments simultaneously in the flow of what's happening, without having to just think about it and say, well, what's happening? You just see it, and you're behaving in a certain way. So we can train ourselves that way. I live in flow a lot, and it's not just when I was an athlete. And I had my first flow experience maybe when I was 10 or 11 playing an electric football game.
Oh, really?
Yeah, everything just happened. And now I can reflect on it, but it was magical. And I think I bought the electric football game for myself, for my nephews, for the next 20 years.
So you can reach that peak level again, getting
Yes,
into that
and
state
I
of the
didn't
flow
realize
and the
that it was
zone.
all within, but it wasn't until I experienced, not playing and having chronic pain and recovering from substances, because I was self-anesthetizing, that I started to understand this stuff. And the best way to learn something is to teach it. And so being able to work with elite athletes and certain people, and on all levels, and teaching them how to be present, teaching them how to be themselves, how to play to their strengths, and just in this thing called life, how can I be fully alive and fully engaged in what I'm doing? And if I can be fully alive and fully engaged in something that I love doing and that I'm the best at, that's the sweet spot.
I love that. So a couple of things. So I do want to mention that on the back of your book, you have this great quote by Kobe Bryant, and this goes in line with what you're saying about being, is he says, George helped me understand the art of mindfulness, to be neither distracted or focused, rigid or flexible, passive or aggressive. I learned just to be. I think that's so powerful and so true. And so you mentioned a little bit about that's something that can be trained. So for a person that's very new in this space and that wants to become better at being mindful and being able to connect that with the wisdom that they have in the expertise within their field, what are some of the best practices that can be applied, or some of the training that a
Yes.
person can start off with?
So the mindful athlete is foundational. So I talk about the 5 superpowers, which is mindfulness, mirror mind, wisdom, or which you can look at wisdom as insight or information. Well, insight or wisdom as information, intellect, being able to reflect and use our rational thinking, and intuition. It's a deep, intuition could be deep knowing, but also having a direct experience of what it's like to be in the moment and to be still and to know what's going on in a way. So whatever you're being taught or whatever you're learning, you have to have a direct experience of what that is, what that feels like. And so you have mindfulness, you have insight or wisdom, but the wisdom has to be balanced with faith. So if you don't have faith, at least launching faith, and some of us have so much faith that we become Pollyanna-ish, and some of us don't have enough faith and we know a lot. We have the information, we have the understanding, but we have so much of it that we become cynical. And so mindfulness helps cultivate these qualities of mind, but also helps to balance them. So when we have too much knowledge and not enough faith, then mindfulness helps us to raise the faith. And if we have too much faith and not enough verified faith, then mindfulness helps us to not just take it on faith, but to see if it is true, to investigate, to explore and see, yeah, this is true. I really experienced what it's like to be still and know. I really experience what it's like when I can just allow myself to observe myself non-judgmentally, in a way on purpose, where I can see things without relating to this moment based on what has happened before, based on some past experience, to be real fresh and to be with the immediacy of experience. And that's really key. So you talk about the superpowers of mindfulness, cultivates and balances them. So you have faith, confidence, you have insight, wisdom, however you want to call it. And then you also have to make the effort. So effort is this idea of not just you make the effort, but the effort is based on your mental energy of being in a helpful mind state, coming from a positive place. So I like to talk about coming from a positive place as you're either in survival mode, which is fight, flight, and freeze, or you're in growth mode. So one is fear, one is love. So when you're in survival mode, fight, flight, freeze, that's the left brain, it's linear. If you're in growth mode or love, it's the whole brain, and you're open and your cognitive functioning is enhanced. So one of the things about right effort, just to really be succinct about it, is to get out of survival mode and be in growth mode. And the interesting thing is, on a cellular level, we're either in survival mode or growth mode. We can't be in both. So if you're in survival mode, right effort is, how do I get out of survival mode and be in growth mode? And the interesting thing about survival mode is we really need that, because that's the reptilian brain that allows us, when we're walking across the street and we're in danger and the car's coming, we don't have time to reflect and say, well, should I move or not? The nervous system just moves the body out of harm's way.
That
so we
trigger.
still need that. Yes, we still need that. We need to be able to have that reptilian brain keep us, but we don't live in some of us do live in challenging places, but we don't live in the jungle. We don't live in places where we have to worry about certain predators like saber-toothed tigers or anything like that. But that reptilian brain is old. Then we have the middle brain, which is where the emotions and memory and sexuality and immune functioning is. And so the idea is, so when we get in a fight, flight, or freeze, we get emotionally hijacked. So there's no space between stimulus and response. And then we're just reacting to things. And some of our reactions may not be conducive to doing things like, somebody jumps out of the bushes and we punch them, and then we turn out, oh, Mom, I didn't mean to hit you.
It's like an automatic reflex.
So there's some need to self-regulate and to realize, okay, can you create the space where you can just notice where they are, what's coming, without reacting to it, and being able to create that space between stimulus and response, so we can actually see what's happening. And then instead of it going right to our middle brain where we get mostly hijacked, it gets to the thinking brain where we can reflect and understand. So it's all of it is biologically sound. I mean, it's taken us millennia to catch up with something that we've known for almost 3,000 years, that this is how the mind and the body works. And so having these things of knowing effort, making the right effort, but if you try too hard, it becomes frenetic. So you have to have steadiness of mind or concentration to balance that. And if we're too concentrated, we get sluggish, then we have to bring more energy into it. So those 5 superpowers is what I call them, is what helps me to generate my own power plant. So that's how I have access to energy to do things, to be present, to be able to fight, or I won't say fight, but to what I call like in this time, how do I embrace the hurt, the pain, and at the same time generate the hope? Got to do both. Can't do either or.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
this time of COVID, so yeah, we're locked down. I can't do things, and there's some things I could do that even though the things I want to do, I can't do. What can I do, or how can I be? So make the shift to being, so that when doing happens, we just hit the ground running. Because it's all about being. It's all about being compassionate, being present, being real, being love, being locked in, or being aware of what it is. Like, to be mindful of what? Mindfulness is fine, but what are you going to be mindful of? You got to know what to be mindful of, and you got to understand what the essentials are, what the basic principles, fundamentals are of things. Just like you and I talking, the fundamental
Mm-hmm.
of just listening, and can I listen without trying to formulate the answers to your questions before I hear your questions, and vice versa. Just being able to talk to your question in a way where I'm being direct, and I'm answering it, and not just sort of lost and just throwing things out there, but really being able to just be still and know, being willing to be vulnerable,
And
and
to be
just being
open.
and just to let things happen, and understanding that because I have faith and confidence, and because I know I can pause even if I make a mistake, I can reset and redo. It gives me the confidence to just be present, and to get out of my comfort zone, and to actually relate to you in a fresh, new, and exciting way.
Yes. A couple of things that really strike me there is it's really coming from a strong place of non-judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Just as you're saying, just as we're listening and talking to each other, and not like trying to preempt what's going to happen next, or what's going to be said next. So you're really being spontaneous, present, and non-judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was one thing that you did say, and I believe this was at an interview at Google, or the talk that you gave, where you also said, let things speak to us,
Right.
and don't compare them to previous experiences. And there's a little bit of maybe I'm getting a little bit too deep into this, but there's a bit of a conflict that I have with that, because I think that is something that we should be spontaneous and practice. But like you were saying, that 3,000 years ago, we intuitively already know, like, ourselves, our surroundings, what's happening, but at the same time we have to allow and create that space for newness.
Mm-hmm.
And so the battle of knowing, and that comes from a strong sense of intuition, but then allowing to have that space of not knowing, that's where I find there's a, like, or at least I find that conflict of
Yes.
like, okay, so
Yes.
what is what?
I appreciate you saying that, because we don't talk about this enough. And so I changed my trousers, but if I take a coin, like a quarter, or it could be a half a dollar, it could be a penny, one side of the coin is heads. That is potential freedom. The other side, tails, is anxiety, not knowing, uncertainty. So there's a military term called VUCA, VUCA. So, and even though in the military, when you're on, recognizant patrol, or you're doing something, everything, from moment to moment, everything is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And even though we think we understand and we have an idea of what we expect to happen, we have no idea what's going to happen. None. But because we don't want to live in that sense of anxiety and uncertainty all the time, we sort of focus on things, or we create things, so we have this sense of everything's okay. And everything is okay if we understand that even in this uncertainty, we get to choose our response versus our reaction. And when we choose a response that's not appropriate to what we want to do, that's okay. We can learn from it, and we can redo it. And then now when you start to go into a situation, you can do mental preparation and understand, okay, what's potentially going to happen? What are the ground rules? What are the essentials that I have to look out for? And then you program all that. You might even practice, mentally rehearse that. But then when you get to the situation, You just have to be with what expresses itself. And when you can be with that, you might discover that all the training you did is not going to help you, or the training that you did helps you to tune in or to pay attention to the appropriate things, the right thing. That's where the wisdom comes in. When, if you're, they call it situational awareness. If you're an airplane pilot, you got thousands of instruments. When you land and take off, that's when the crashes occur. You got to know what are the one or two things you need to focus on, like ground speed, altitude. You can't, if you're not experienced and if you don't understand what the essentials are, you're wasting time being all over the place, being out of control, instead of being able to lock in to what's essential, what's the main thing that you need to pay attention to.
So I love that, because it kind of reminds me of a situation that I was just recently, just now, practically experienced, in which, as you're saying, there's all the practice and training that you can have. And it's really a matter of applying it and being aware and knowing that there's always going to be unforeseen circumstances that come into play, and you're just going to have to adjust to that given situation. So for me, as an example, I was like, so like excited and anxious, like so prepared for this interview. And then I'm like, I get a call. I'm like, okay, you got to do a 6 a.m. meeting. I'm like, wait, what? I like wanted to get my sleep in, do a workout, do all of this, and be like mentally, emotionally, physically, and everything prepared. But then that comes up. But there's also, there's also others, and I want to apply this to a much bigger spectrum in what we're all going through right now. There's so many difficult life circumstances that are surrounding us right now. Whether that be a loss or loss of job or person. And so we're constantly, whether we know it or not, somehow performing, right? And that can be whether you are an athlete, or whether you are in the public eye, or whether you're just giving a presentation or speaking in front of people, or speaking now over Zoom and stuff. And so when there's life circumstances that are going on, that sometimes can really trigger a person or come into play, or that's really a matter of choice as well, if you allow that to come into play. So what would be the best practice in order to not let performance anxiety get in the way of you reaching your ultimate performance, or the way that your presence and energy is required in that given moment? Because presence and energy can be really strongly seen and felt. So how can you unblock or untether yourself from the noise that's all around or inside even?
Yes. So everything that's happening right now is happening because the conditions are right for that to happen. So you talked about your experience of, okay, you're going to have this interview with me, and you had an idea how that should be and how that should be set up. And so as a result of that, there's a part of you that's saying, okay, me having a 6 o'clock meeting and all this other stuff, this should not be happening. But it is happening. And it's not a problem unless you make it a problem. So that's when I say, okay, this is what's happening. So you say yes, and yes to life. This is where the current is going. I really didn't prefer this, but can I be present for all of it and realize that the most important thing is for me to show up and be present and understand how it's affecting me, and not judge it and not repress it, but just noticing, yes, I'm frustrated, I'm tired, I'm exhausted. I feel like I really would have rather had some space in between. And you acknowledge all that, and then you just let it go and just focus, just be present. Mm-hmm. So once we understand that this is what happens, and then we interpret what that means, and it's in the interpretation that we create a problem or we create a boom. You get to choose and say, okay, this is exciting, it's going to be great. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to show up and I'm going to assume it's going to be great.
Exactly.
So you see what I'm saying? So this is it. And you don't have to be on the team or anything to know this. Life is unpredictable. Things happen. Things happen. Like myself, I had maybe 20 minutes before I got into this, because I had to go run an errand. I had to do all these things. And so for me, I learned that, okay, so I'll just rest for 10, 15, 20 minutes. And then I just stop. And then once I'm here, if I'm fully engaged being here, and forget about the story about what would, should, or could have happened, and just show up and see what happens. Because it always comes down to just being in the moment. And I have this idea, this motto, I say, joy now and never. So
Mm-hmm.
it's about having joy now, not because some external source is going to be a certain way. It's about me generating that joy and saying, I'm going to have fun. I'm just going to be here, be in a moment and enjoy what I'm doing. Just bring it as love and compassion and kindness, affinity to you. And even though I don't know you on some level, I'm speaking to a masterpiece.
Ah, and I'm
And
hearing a
yes,
masterpiece.
and I'm relating to, and when I relate to your masterpiece, I'm relating to mine. So when I look at you and say, and I decide you're an amazing person, not because I'm deciding it, because you are,
Hmm.
then that's going to be my experience rather than me coming in and saying, got to talk to this woman, I don't know her, and I got a client I got to talk to, and all of that. I'm not really here. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of, and then I'm making all of this a problem when it's not a problem. It's just life, and the conditions are right for everything to be happening. And my happiness is going to be predicated on how I interpret that. 90% of our long-term happiness is predicated on how our nervous system interprets our experience. Not
I
10%,
must,
90%.
that's that's a whole lot. And I must say that's a really great reminder that you have just shared there, because we really are like, this is so powerful. That's why they
Mm-hmm.
say mind over matter. And it's really just a matter of the self-talk. And I must say that because I've been listening to you and watching a lot of your interviews, I had to remind myself this morning, okay, does this come up? And I could see them, the things that were coming into my head, what was annoying me. And I just thought, oh, there you are. But okay, fine, whatever. Go and have a cup of tea, and maybe come back later if
Yes,
it's
yes.
necessary.
So you can relate to your thoughts and all of your sense doors, smells, taste, you know, what you see, what you hear, what you smell, what you taste, what you feel, what you think. They are all objects that can be observed in a way where you just notice them as objects arising and coming and going. And you can relate to that negative committee, that negative self-talk, as if it's background music in the restaurant. You just let it be.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to do anything to it. You can just let it be and just be in your body, just be present. Just notice, oh, there's this thinking, oh, there's this idea that, I'm not good enough, or I'm not prepared, or it's gonna be awful and all that. It's like, okay, I can notice that without making it true or giving it the energy to say that it's true. I could just say, well, what do you know? Or just notice it's there, but then focus on what's right, what I need to do. Just what am I doing now? That's it,
Mm.
just being in the moment. And that can anchor us in the moment. And even though we can think about what might happen or what happened before, there's time later to reflect and think about that. But right now, you don't have time for that. You have to be present and just noticing that it's just like background music. You can just notice it without identifying it or without feeding it or without getting lost in it. So the thinking,
Yeah.
it starts proliferating. And that's why I always teach just being in your body, just you're sitting and breathing, and just rest in the breath, rest in the body, rest in this moment. What am I doing? What's the intention? It's directed thought. I come back to, okay, I'm just listening. I'm just talking. That's it. Or listening, talking, and just refocus, because you can direct your attention. If I ask you to focus on your tip of your nose, that's where it goes, but it doesn't stay there. So you can have the ability of direct attention to what you're doing, what I call directed thought. Okay, I'm just sitting here
Mm.
thinking. Then once you get here, just be here. So whatever's here, just be with it. But that's a practice. That's a muscle that we can practice over and over. So when I talk about the practice, it's not just sitting in silence. It's from the time we wake up to the time we go to sleep, we can be aware, even if it's just roughly about how do I feel? Is my mind positive or negative? Am I focused on internal or external? Am I focused on
Mm.
self or other? These are simple questions that just help us orient ourselves to what we're doing. What am I doing? What's my intention? And sometimes we get lost, so we need to remind ourselves, remember, oh, I'm here. I'm supposed to be doing this. I got pulled away to something else because something is bothering me. Then at some point, what's pulling me away needs to be attended to because it's telling me you got to pay attention to me.
It's like an alert.
Yes, it's like an alert or
I
thermostat.
love, yes, I love those questions that you've just raised about questioning whether you are these internal or external circumstances, and really just questioning yourself to be more aware of where you're at in this
That's
present
right.
time. And so I want to read a little bit, just I've got a lot of bookmarks here in this book, and
Go
there's
for it.
one
I'm here.
sentence.
Your show. You go, and I'm gonna respond to whatever you do. So feel free.
Thank you. Well, this is one of my favorite sentences of the books, which is high performance is less about physical attributes and more about what you bring to the table when you commit to deliberate practice. And I feel like you've already touched upon that deliberate practice. And that's going back to the questioning yourself and being mindful of your presence. But there's also a part in which you mentioned about romancing the discomfort zone. So talk to us a little bit more, expanding upon the deliberate practice and the discomfort zone that you can romance. What is it exactly, and how do you romance that?
Yes. So let's talk about deliberate practice. So it's this idea of you ask, what is the one thing I can work on that enhances my performance right away? And so if I know, okay, so I need to listen better, I don't listen as well as I could, then you deliberately practice listening.
As simple as that.
It's like conscious, deliberate. I need to get better at listening. So then you create a practice where what do I have to learn? What do I have to practice so that I can listen better? So I don't listen well, or I'm missing things. So I can beat myself up and judge myself, or I can say, oh, that's telling me what I need to practice and learn.
Mm.
So then you practice and learn that. Then you go back. How is it? Okay, I was on a scale of 1 to 10, I was at a 3 before, and I did some learning, some practicing. Now I'm up to 3.5 or 3 1/3. Now I keep practicing deliberately. So it gives me a focus. It gives me a goal of, okay, if I want to increase my listening, what's the process that I need to engage in that's going to help me do that? And as I'm doing it and as I'm practicing it, I notice, oh, my mind is off on, maybe I left the toaster oven on or something. I just notice that as a thought and then just come back to what I'm doing and reset.
Mm-hmm.
And so you learn how, so it's so deliberate practice. And so it's not just if you're an athlete. So like if I'm playing soccer and my left foot, dribbling with my left foot is not, being able to move the ball and control the ball with my left foot is not so good. Then if everybody's playing me to go right, then I have to practice with my left foot so that I can go left or right. But if I'm at a 1, or if I'm at a 4 and all I need to do is get it to a 7 so that it gives me more flexibility, or maybe if I don't learn how to use my left, how do I go left and then come back right? Or some
Mm-hmm.
strategy. So you practice that. So it's deliberately practicing something you're not really, really good at. So for me, I was very shy, and when I first started speaking in public, I would get so nervous that I would shake. And the more I shook, the more I tried not to shake, I would shake more. And so I had to deliberately say, how do I overcome this? And so I was in graduate school in psychology at the time, and I knew what Viktor Frankl calls a paradoxical intention. What it means is just a strategy that says, okay, instead of trying not to shake, why don't you become a shaking fool and be the best shaker there is? And so once I did that, I stopped shaking. So that's kind of a deliberate practice. So now in order to do that, I have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. So when I talk about romanticizing the uncomfort zone, it means that to learn and to grow, you got to be out of your comfort zone. So it's doable, hard to do, but doable, but it being in increments, not trying to do everything all at once and then push through, but just be a little bit. So let's say, and it's interesting, there's a movie called I forget the name of the movie. It'll come to me, but it was Paul Newman.
Mm-hmm.
And he told his grandson, no, actually, there's another take on that. It's called We Bought a Zoo with Matt Damon, Matt Damon.
Matt Damon, yeah.
And he said that he told his son that all you gotta do is be courageous for 10 seconds.
Crazy?
Be courageous.
Oh, courageous. Okay.
For 10 seconds. Just go in there and just, like this is how he met his wife is, he put up and said, okay, you just gotta be brave for 10 seconds. And then you go in and you just say what you need to say. So there's an uncomfort, but if it's just temporary, it's not gonna be, because it might feel like forever. It's like, I can get comfortable being uncomfortable. We can train ourselves to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because we do it when we're in abusive situations and other times anyway. If we have a boss or somebody abusive, we do it because we're afraid not to do it. So we can say, okay, I'm going to embrace, or I'm going to romance the discomfort by just seeing it as the process, and it's not personal, and it will pass. It's going to be impermanent, but I'm going to get stronger and stronger. And so if you think about how some therapies address phobias, is what they call exposure therapy. So the more you get exposed to it, the less you become afraid of it. So for me, all these years of speaking, the more I get up and speak, and the more I do what I'm afraid of, the only way out is through. I get comfortable with being able to tolerate more and more, until I get to the point where you just get up and you talk and you don't worry about it. But it's opening to it, being vulnerable and feeling the discomfort, but noticing the discomfort. The nervous system, when something is uncomfortable, it automatically has aversion or pulling away or avoiding it. And what we want to do is embrace it, say yes to it, but do it in increments that are manageable. You don't have to do it. So there's a talk about, I don't have a rubber band. Maybe, let me see if I have one in here.
I love, we have coins, rubber bands.
Yeah. So in the rubber band, you stretch it a little bit, but if you stretch it too much, it's going to break, or it might go all the way back. So you just stretch it a little bit. You just stretch yourself. So in order for us to learn, we have to get out of our comfort zone. So we play. This is comfort. This is discomfort. We play in between comfort and discomfort. That's how we play. So we can just be a little bit out of our comfort zone, and then that'll grow and grow. And then you won't know the difference between comfort and discomfort, because you'll just embrace it and say, this is a challenge. It's gonna be great. Yes.
Yeah.
So once you start to understand that what we are doing is, we are on an unconscious level, we're saying yes to some things, no to some things. It's going to be bad. And it's based on what has happened before, or it could be sort of a thing on our DNA, like now loud noises and heights. Those are things that protect us. So not all fear is bad. So you understand that it's helpful to do that. But if okay, I have that, and there's a time when I'm going to have to tolerate some height, if I'm going to get in the plane or whatever, but that's different. But it's, once again, is being compassionate with ourselves and not pushing ourselves too much out of our comfort zone. And our neuroplasticity works in this way, in terms of, to develop, more neural nets or brain connections. It's, we have to have our aerobic rate up, because we have to have a certain level of oxygen for the brain cells to work. Second thing is, we do things in increments. So incremental, that's how the brain works. That's how we program the brain. And then the third thing is, it's got to be a little bit real close to our limit, so it's hard to do but doable. And the fourth thing is, we have to bring a quality of interest into it. Once again, right effort, or just having a quality of interest, investigation, so that we stimulate the motivational circuits in the brain. So the neuroscience is really clear on this. So this process of getting comfortable being uncomfortable is the way the brain programs its nerve. You make neural nets. Or so people say muscle memory. There's no such thing as muscle memory. What they're really saying is that there's a neural net in the brain. It's predicated on that. So the science is catching up to the spiritual practices on some level, and and we can, so I like to use both, you know, if I can quantify it in science, but there's some things that are beyond human research or search, or
And
can't really
comprehension.
explain it. It's like if I'm
Yes.
falling out the window, it's like, how does that feel? Can I describe that? No, if I'm falling or parachute, you know, you can't express it. Or it's like riding a bike. How do you learn how to ride a bike? You can't really explain it.
Yeah.
But
And every time it's also very different.
yes, and
Um,
it's in what we call implicit or non-declarative learning. There's a part of us that learns better when we're not consciously trying to understand what we're doing.
hmm So a couple of things have really jumped at me. Two questions before we get into a little meditation and before you head out. It's wondering about some of the denominators that act as a hindrance for people to not reach their optimal performance. Is not leaning into your discomfort zone one of those? And then my next question is seeing that science, then science is even catching up to the power of mindfulness and self-awareness. Why is there such a stigma still surrounding that can still be seen as a weakness? Because also jumping into the fact that, and I'm sorry, I'm going into like two different directions here,
You're
but
good, you're good.
the and stop me if you can't follow. But like as an example, The Last Dance, huge docu-series that of course so many people have tuned into, but unfortunately they have not showcased the power or the engine behind the wheels that has also played a part in creating the players to be able to perform at such a high level. So yes, for one, why wasn't that shown? And why is there still a stigma, or why is mindfulness and being self-aware in practice seen as a weakness? And for two, is not leaning into the discomfort zone a hindrance towards people's reaching their peak performance?
Yes. So in this situation, because what is going to be in the story is going to be limited by the storyteller's level of consciousness.
I hear that.
And if you're, and in most venues, we're going after the sizzle, we're going after the conflict, and we're not really going after the deeper meanings and what this could mean. So, and part of it, in fairness to the editor, because of Corona, it got pushed into, he had to edit a lot
Sooner.
sooner,
Yeah.
and so they had to really, so it was a little, it was good for entertainment value, but as far as the storyline and as far as the other things, there's a lot in there, but there's a lot that was left out, like the transformation part, and that's why what I was interviewed for didn't make sense to show.
Mm.
It wasn't consistent with that. So why people don't do that, all I will tell you is ignorance is the cause of suffering, and people don't know that they don't know. And because of the myths that are out there about meditation or about being calm or about being
Still.
who is going for consensus, or just being calm and being loving, can be perceived as a weakness, because that's not the paradigm that some people have been raised on. And even though it doesn't work, that's all they know. And if you let go of that, who are you? And so a lot of us are afraid to admit that we're wrong. And so we hold on to ways of being, like myself. Why didn't I take up meditation and just this self exploration? So what Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. Why didn't I start examining my life in high school and college? Because there was no need for me. I had this idea that what I was doing was going to work, and that this stuff, when people come at me, I said, man, leave me alone. Just give me a brew. I'm straight. But it's, to me, I talk about this in the book. Unless you get the sense of urgency, or unless you really admit that the status quo isn't going to get it, and that you have to take a radical change, you have to be willing to change things, you're going to keep doing what you do. It's the theory about, in old science class, you have the glass beaker and you have water in it. If you put a frog in that beaker and you turn up the flame underneath it very low, the frog will stay in there and boil. But if you turn the flame up, it'll jump out. So that's how we are. You know, we don't know. And unless we get to a place where what we're doing is not an option, we're going to keep doing what we've been doing, thinking that it's going to get us to where we want to get to. And so unless we have this honest reflection and evaluation of what we need, and I would say it's not for everybody, it's not for those who need it, it's for those who want it. So unless you have some idea of, well, maybe there's a whole other world that I can open up to, and I'm willing to be uncomfortable and I'm going to explore it, unless you see life as an adventure, unless it occurs to you that this is important, and that it's because I have people that I train that come to me and they say, well, I'm working with this team and I'm trying to make them do this. And how do I make them do it? And I said, it's not your job to make them do it. It's like, who are you to tell them what's good for them? You
You
have
can
to
guide
understand.
them, but
Yeah,
don't
but if
impose
you,
them.
the best way to do it, it's like with me, I had my cousin and friend of mine, when I stopped drinking and I started transforming, they stopped drinking because they saw how it affected me.
Hmm.
So that's how you do it, is by sharing how it's helping you and how helpful it is, without judging or without forcing it on other people, but just seeing it. And so when you start to see, and that's what got people, and they say, okay, well, yeah, being in the zone, yeah, I want more of that. But here's the conundrum. The best way to get into the zone is not to try to get into the zone, because the more you try to get into the zone or float, you won't.
Just let it be.
Just let it be. So you understand, what are the conditions in which you, the being in flow, being in the zone arises naturally based on the conditions.
It's such a catch 22. Okay, I know we're pressed for time. A quick minute or so meditation or exercise
Yes.
that you can
So
share.
yeah. So I like to talk. I call it arriving, but you can do this with your eyes open or closed. But I like to close my eyes, just noticing that
Um,
you're sitting. So we're just going to sit and notice you're sitting. You can prove this quite easily because you can feel your feet, you know, where your buttocks touch the chair. Keep your sternum open. Lightly close your eyes. And unless you have a respiratory ailment, just closing your mouth and breathe through your nose. And we'll start off with a few deeper in and out breaths. So the kind of breathing we want is the belly breathing. So you can imagine that your belly has a balloon in it. And as you breathe in, your belly expands. And if you watch babies, this is how they breathe anyway. And as you breathe out, the belly contracts. So it's the idea of breathing in and feeling the entire body all the way down to your toes, bottom of your feet, out to your fingers and thumbs, up to the top of your head, your neck. That unless there's just like there's an envelope around your body, just noticing that envelope is expanding as you breathe in and contracting as you breathe out. So you're just breathing in, feeling the body while being in the seated posture, and breathing out, feeling the body while sitting. So just breathing in, feeling the entirety of the body and whatever's there, tingling, whatever the sensations of pressure as you make contact, just allowing it to be as it is. Just breathing and settling back in this relaxed alertness where you're just being still and knowing that you are sitting and breathing. There's no need to make anything happen. It's just start off with a few deeper in and out breaths and just let the breath breathe itself. And if you see yourself controlling your breath, just noticing you're breathing in and you're breathing out, and just resting in the breath, resting in the body. And we're not trying to make anything happen or avoid anything. It's just sitting and breathing and knowing it, allowing the body and the breath to speak to us in its own language and to be just as it is, without trying to change it, without moving, without wishing for things to be different, without trying to relax or anything other than just to be still and know that you are sitting and breathing. And no matter how many times the mind gets lost in thoughts or images or sounds, just by thinking about the body, thinking about the breath, that's where your attention goes. And then it's just a matter of feeling what's there, noticing what's there. So we'll take a few more in and out breath cycles of breathing in, feeling the body, breathing out, feeling the body while sitting. Allowing any sounds, images, thoughts to just float by, just like music, background music in a restaurant. Just let it be there and just rest in the body, rest in the breath. And when you're not able to do that, you can reset, restart, begin again. And when you're ready, just breathing in, feeling the body as a whole. And as you breathe out, letting go of the body, letting go of the breath, and just opening your eyes. So it doesn't take long. 1 or 2 minutes is all you need, but you can do it sitting and just breathing and letting everything be, just be in the body, just breathing in, breathing out, my eyes open, just resting in the body, resting in the breath, letting things go and letting things be.
Don't know if you can tell, but my eyes are like, I just feel so calm right now.
Yes.
And just being able to feel my heartbeat. And of course, I got these amazing AirPods in, so I just felt like you were literally my voice guiding my entire being. That was really phenomenal.
Yeah, you can train your nervous system to just breathe in, breathe out, and then have that same anchoring, that same presence of mind. Yes. The nervous system can be trained to do that. You don't have to do it a lot of time. Even if you do 10 minutes a day, a minute at a time, 2 minutes at a time, maybe 5 times a day in between transitions, like you have a busy life. Can you just finish this? So you just sit, you breathe, you reflect on just being in your body and, how do you feel about that? And just being in your body. And then you go to the next thing. I call it arriving. You get home, you just arrive. You just
arriving.
Just arriving. So you're really here. You're not where you used to be or where you need to be later. You're just right here.
Yes. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, George.
You're welcome.
You. Yes.
This is a lot of fun.
Yes, it's been so great to have you, and thank you for sharing all your wisdom and knowledge and even this incredible meditation. I know this is something that I will be able to apply before any interview, any given situation now.
Yes.
I'd like for you to share any upcoming projects and courses that you have going on that you'll be able to share.
Yes. So, I have a website, georgemumford.com, and I have the Mindful Athlete Seeking Performance online program. We actually just finished a 6-week study group where people, when they sign up for the course, they have the course for life. And we have these 6-week study groups where once a week I get on and we do Q&A, and we have these modules that we go through together. And it's a great way for people if they want to deepen their practice. If you've read my book, or even if you haven't, you can use these 5 superpowers, and we'll go through it. And we're going to start, I think, in 2 weeks, which is the 14th of October. We'll start another 6-week cycle, but you can sign up anytime. If you go to my website, you can sign up for the Mindful Athlete program, online program. But the thing is that we're going to focus on resilience this next 6 weeks.
Okay.
The theme. And so people have done it, and you can go online, you do things, but I'm very big on what they call circular learning. So I've written my book, and I'll read each chapter again for this next cycle. I've already read each chapter 42 times.
Oh, wow.
And so each time I read it, there's something else that we get, because they say we only retain 30% of what we read. So if that's the case, we got to read things at least 3 or 4 times to really get
to that 70, 80, 90% at least.
Yes. So that's just my thing. And there'll be other teachings. Oh, the other thing I want to mention is you can go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. Yes. Every Thursday I think I sent you one this past week. I send videos of what I call being at home with George. So they're about 12 to 15 minutes, and I talk about how to embrace the hurt, the pain, and then generate the hope, to create that possibility, and a real practical application on how we can use this training to what we're dealing with right now.
Absolutely amazing. For anybody who hasn't read the book yet, please go ahead. The Mindful Athlete. Honestly, these are the secrets to pure performance, and it's really great to be able to see you in this time online on your YouTube channel as well. You've really got some great nuggets and gems in there. It's only 10 to 15 minutes long, these videos, but you really take away so much from them. So thank you so much again for your time and everything that you do, because you really are one of those people that takes away struggle and ignites transformation. So thank you. It's really such an honor to have you.
I appreciate what you're doing and you having me here. So thank you so much.
Oh, cheers, George. Cheers to you.
Thank you so much for joining us here today. If you liked that episode, please like, comment, and share, and subscribe to this channel so that you know when the next conversation is up. I love to hear your thoughts and engage, so please don't be a stranger. Cheers.